All right, so the way to get good at email design is to copy emails that already exist. So I pulled this one that I thought looked cool. I like the way the images are laid out and the way the text is kind of separated here. So I'm going to copy this one to one, but I'm going to do it instead of copying it exactly. I'm going to do it for a different brand. So I envisioned this being a good fashion email. So I wanted it to be a fashion brand. And the first one that came to mind was Patagonia. Like the outdoorsy feel of this, I think would translate perfectly to Patagonia. We'll just update it using their styles, using their colors and things like that. So we'll get right into that. All right. So the first thing I see, we'll start off not worrying about getting the colors. We'll start off trying to do this as close to one as possible. So I see a rectangle right there. So I'm going to drop that in here. Oh, what? Is that exactly the right size? That is crazy. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to make it. Okay, somehow this is perfect. So I don't even need to change the opacity and get it right. So we'll just do that. We'll do that here. We'll make it white. Now, I will change the opacity just to get the right logos. Okay, so let's go grab the Patagonia logo. Let me copy that. Okay, so I'll have to find it. All right, so I'm going to pull this logo. Nope. I'm going to pull this logo like that. And the way I'm going to match what we have in the inspo is by, let's get the A the same color as, or same size as the S, and then that should give us good proportions. Okay, that's close enough. And then we'll put this, we'll line this up with that right there. Okay, so now we can group those together. So we can move them at the same time. And now we're gonna get this text here. So I'm gonna just write exactly the same thing and then we can change it later. And they have this aligned that way. And you can use the extension what font to figure out fonts that you see on the website. So we'll just pull exactly what Patagonia have on their website. What was that, Ridgeway or something like that? Ridgeway. Okay, so because they don't have this font, I'm just gonna leave it as this default Figma font. Normally you can download it, but for the sake of this video, it's just not that important. So now we're gonna get this size the same way. So instead of updating the font, you can just hit scale and then try to get it as close as possible. So we can see this T is lined up, but then this G is off, which means we have to bring it down a little bit. Yeah, that's pretty good. And then we're gonna leave that as is. And then I'm just gonna take this option and drag it out in case we need to use this size again. I'm gonna ungroup this and then group these back together. And then this one, because we put it at 25, we're gonna put it back at 100. And there you go. Now we have this part complete. We're gonna move that over there. Okay, so now we need this header image that kind of fades into the background. All right, we're gonna worry about actual image selection later. As placeholders, I'm just gonna use this random image of butterflies that I found. So let's drag that onto here. Actually, just to make this easier, if we turn this into a frame, then we can hit clip content. And then we can bring this into here. And now I'm going to decrease the opacity just so I can, maybe I'm not going to do that because that's hard to, so I'm going to look at where, so this image clearly ends right there, but they have a gradient on top of it that causes it to blend into the background. Okay, so we're gonna do the gradient separately. All right, so let's see. And this is going to be black, but also gradient. So the black needs to be down here. So we're going to flip that. And then this is see-through. So we're going to drop that. And there's probably more. It's probably more like that. And let's group these together actually. Yeah, let's pull that in. I'm holding command to crop the edges like that. And I'm gonna bring this over. And then if I press command, okay. So now I'm just, so we're just gonna eyeball this and try to get the gradient pretty similar. I mean, that looks pretty good. I think the main thing is like this feels like a sharp transition compared to this, which is a little slower. Yeah, so I'm gonna call that pretty good. I think what are we thinking? I think that feels right. Okay, so let's leave it at that. We'll group that. We'll bring this over and we're starting to get something close. Okay, so now we need to get this. Okay, so I'm gonna zoom all the way in. And again, these are rectangles. I'm gonna drop in some rectangles. I'm gonna change the opacity so we can see what we're doing. Maybe a little bit more than that. Okay, so 75 is good. All right, so now we just click, hold command, and then line up the edges. If you can't get it perfectly to the pixel, I'll just go to the closest pixel. And all right, so now we're gonna do the same for these other three. Okay, so now because we eyeballed it, now we can actually clean it up. So one way to do that is I can tell that these edges are at least supposed to be the same size. So I'll just take one example and then we can see here that it says spacing is 9. So I'm gonna go 8 just to make it a nice easy number. And then I'm gonna make sure all of them are a nice even number so we can divide it or multiply it easier later on if we need to. 8's just kind of like a nice consistent number to use. So we see this is 8, we see this spacing is 8, and we see this spacing is 8. So now we've got all of it at 8. Now I'm going to make sure that these are lined up there. And then we can make sure that these are lined up here. Same thing here. Same thing here, and there's one more edge here. All right, perfect. So now we can go here, we can select all of these, we can group them together, and we'll center it on that frame there. All right, so now I put the butterfly placeholders back in there, and we're going to launch this into the new email. And then this is where things start to get easier. As you do, the more you do this, the more you realize you've already created some things that you need. So this is a little bit different. We just have to change the order. So as you can see, these two, it's basically just mirrored. So let's see if there's just a way to do that. There we go. And this one is also pretty close. It uses the same component. So if you option and drag it down here, so I can see that this narrow tall part is over here, and we know that these, bring it inside here, we know that that needs to be 8 apart, and we're done. We group that, center it. Okay. And let's do this line. That's easy enough. So it's shape, line. Maybe 2 pixels. Yeah. Bring that into the middle there. We don't need that there anymore. Okay, let's do the button next. Button will be a rectangle, and white, bring back the opacity, and is this the same? Nope, it needs to be bigger. Okay, so let's do center it. Then we'll go on to scale. Line up the E, and then line up the end. We'll center it on the button. You could also, we also could have just made it a frame from the beginning, but okay. And to get the spacing right, so that's 224, 224. 224. All right, what's left? Okay, we've got this header text, and let's see what we want to use for the font. Actually, before we do the text, let's go ahead and do the images. So image selection, that's a lot more fun. So clearly, the point of this email is so this is a imagery kind of platform where they're licensing photos. So what they're doing here is they're short welcome blurb, and then they're introducing you to 3 categories. So we can do the same thing here. We can find 3 categories from Patagonia. So let's do, yeah, maybe we'll do men's. So we'll do jackets and vests, fleece, and tops. All right, so let's pull some images here. Let's just make it easy. So what kind of images are we looking at here? So the images are the product. So in a way, they're just showing product images, right? So it's not like mock-ups or something like that. They're just directly showing the image. So because of that, I'm just going to directly pull the image of the product. Okay, so this is, All right, so we don't have access to their brand folder. So for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to do screenshots of all this. I just don't want that tiny text up there. So let's just take 4 screenshots. Okay. So obviously it's kind of getting cut off, but so we can either fix that or we can just make it part of the look. So like, in all honesty, leaving open loops in emails actually does help, because now they have to, so say if we leave things cropped out like this, now they have to actually click onto the website to see the rest of what they're looking for. So a lot of this can actually end up working in your favor if you don't show everything that there is to show. So we can do that, and then here we can do this. So that could be part of the strategy. So all right, so that's one category, and then just so I remember, jackets and vests. I'm just gonna leave myself a comment, jackets and vests. So when we write in the header later on, we remember. So now I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing with these other 2 categories. Okay, so what ended up happening was this used to be jackets, but somehow a t-shirt ended up in there. So I just changed this to all tops. This is fleece, and these are going to be hats. If this were a real email, I'd probably play around with the sizing and things a little bit more. But just for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to leave it at that. And now we need this header section. So I'm thinking kind of a lifestyle, almost pretty similar to this one, but obviously more focused on what the person's wearing. Since this one's not a fashion brand, they didn't care too much about that. So I'm going to find what we're looking for. All right, here's one that works pretty well. So since we're focused on men's collection, found a picture of a man with the apparel front and center. All right, so what's next? Now I'm going to start messing with the colors and making it more like the original. So the Patagonia website, so making it congruent with the website is something that makes sense. So now they have this beige color is already there since we just straight took the images, but this background is white. So let's just test it out. Maybe this is going to look better on a white background. That means, so I'm thinking ahead, that means we're going to have to change the button colors. So I'm going to save these ones to the side just in case, and I'm going to change this fill to white, which also means I'm going to change possibly this gradient to white wherever it's black. And this is looking good. I think this will work. Okay, so now we're gonna have to flip the colors on the button here. Let me just double check how they're doing their buttons. So they're actually, okay, so this is perfect. So now we've got a pill-shaped button, which is easy to do. All we're gonna do for that is to increase the radius. So there we go. So now you see how we went from copying directly to making adjustments for this brand in particular, and we've already gotten pretty close. Now the main thing that's left is the text. Actually, before we go there, I just remembered this line is something we missed when we flipped colors. So always kind of watch for that when you're changing colors. Things can get lost. So let's fix that line, and now let's get the text. Okay, so this is pulled from the Patagonia website. These exact fonts, if we were to use them, what we would do is pull up what font, and then we see Copernicus and Ridgeway. But because that's just not a good use of time right now, I'm just going to use some generic font without serifs and some generic font with serifs. All right, so here is the text. The copy is obviously nonsense, and I just kind of left it at that because this video is getting long and it's about design. So we can do another video on copywriting if there's interest. But as you can see, this is pretty close to the Patagonia way of doing things. There's a lot more I would do that kind of diverges a lot from this, but since the point of the video is to show you how to recreate an email from what already exists, I'll leave it at that. One more thing I will do though is something I noticed about Patagonia's branding is that they have these rounded corners on the rectangles. So one last thing we can do to make this even more on brand is introduce some corner radiuses and see if that looks better. And I think it does. It looks a lot closer to the look and feel of. That's a little too much. So let's try 15. I like 15. That feels, see, as we can see here, the butterfly is still kind of showing. I'll get rid of that. Yeah, 15 seems right. Let's do 15 on all of these, and that's gonna be our final touch. All right, so that's the way you design emails. The important part of this is that now when you do this once, things are gonna start being reusable. So I rarely have to design new emails anymore because from all of the ones, I just have so many components like this. So I can pull this out, replace it for any brand. So another brand, maybe they don't have corner radiuses and we can get rid of that. Maybe they use square buttons. All we have to do is get rid of that. Maybe their buttons are red instead of white. All we do is that. And maybe the text needs to be black. We can change that whatever we want. So this is super flexible for any brand. Anytime I need a component like this in the future, I have the template. So a lot of these things, you're only making it once. And once you do this enough times, you're just going to end up dragging and dropping from components you've built in the past. So I'm going to leave it at that. If you already make $100,000 a month through your e-commerce brand, you don't need to be doing any of this on your own. In fact, it's a waste of your time. You should be focusing on acquisition. If you need help with email marketing and you're over 100,000 per month, book a call with me at the link in the description, and I'll take care of all of this for you. All right, we'll see you in the next video. Like this video, subscribe if you haven't, and let me know what else you want to learn about in the future.